Lisa from Been There, Got Out. We are actually starting because Raiford has another client at 6, and I'm so glad that you agreed to come on. So quickly, Rafe, you want to introduce yourself? I mean, we've been on before, and obviously I put a lot of your content out there because it's excellent, and
Thank
we
you.
always recommend your book too. So tell people who don't know you already who you are.
Thank you. My name is Raiford Palmer. I'm a divorce lawyer in Chicago, and I'm also the author of I Just Want This Done, How Smart, Successful People Get Divorced Without Losing Their Kids, Money, and Minds. Got a book right here. That's a copy of it. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and wherever ebooks are sold. It's audiobook on Audible, Kindle, paperback, any way you want it. We got it available. But it's a book that tells people the secrets about divorce that divorce lawyers don't tell. So I know you guys liked it. I really appreciate you talking about it with your audience. And it's really resonated with people, and I'm really gratified. So it's helped a lot of folks. And it's been exciting to talk about, not just the book, but all the things about divorce and relationships. So how to not get into divorce to begin with, and then what happens if you're involved in one.
Right, and it's funny to see you holding the book up because it's usually Chris who takes it down off his shelf and holds it up all the time. And we tell people that even though it's not specifically for our community with people dealing with high conflict divorce, so many of the strategies are really, really useful. And so we're going to talk about that today. So first, I think the thing that captured my attention recently was you did some content on the loser's fallacy. And I was like, ooh, anything I've never heard before, I want you to talk about. So tell everyone, what is the loser's fallacy?
So the loser's fallacy is the idea that the person who is maybe the primary breadwinner, the primary wage earner, feels like it's their money, and it feels like they keep giving and giving and giving. And they'll say to us, I've given enough, what more do they want from me? Or I'm giving too much with alimony, child support, division of assets. And that is like it's a blocking mindset. And it's not true that it's theirs, but it's understandable that they think it's theirs. And similarly, and now I'm going to use genders not just for generic purposes, but a lot of times the guy says, I keep giving and giving money. Now, I've represented plenty of women that are the breadwinners in the family, and they're the ones that feel like they're giving too much. The fallacy is, first of all, it's not yours to give. It's marital property and money that needs to be shared among the parties, depending on the state that you're in. And in addition, with the children, sometimes the primary parent, whoever's sort of spent most of the time parenting the children, typically the mom, feels like she's giving time to dad. And she isn't. The children need time with both parents, but it's natural to feel that you're giving something up. And it's just that mindset is something that blocks people from having successful agreements in divorces. That's really where what I was getting at talking about in the book, and I talk to my clients is, yeah, I understand that it feels like you're giving and giving and giving, whether it's the kids or giving up visitation time or you're giving up money, but you kind of have to drop that mindset and think about it collectively if you're going to have a successful result sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, is it easy or is it really hard to get people out of that loser's fallacy mindset? Because we know in this community, a lot of people are very, certain people really want the money and other people really want the kids.
Well, so in narcissist borderline personality folks, it's all about the scoreboard. So that it becomes extra challenging in these high conflict cases because it really, the narcissist borderline really does think it's their stuff. They think the kids and the money is all theirs.
Everything.
Which makes these cases super challenging, and now there are multiple authors that have written good books on that subject. And I deal with the narcissist borderline, I think, in one of the chapters in the book, but there are entire books written on that topic, as you know, and you've talked about. Super challenging because it's hard to get those folks off that mindset. And my heart goes out to the people that are dealing with those divorces because it's like a weather condition. It's sort of a force of nature, and it's something you're just going to have to deal with those people, and it's very difficult. So with most people, I'm able to convince them to step down off that mindset and say, look, this is, the law says this is collective stuff. The law finds that you're both equal partners in this marriage, whether somebody earned more of the money, whether somebody spent more of the time with the kids. The law says it's a 50-50 deal, like any partnership. And whether somebody worked more or somebody spent more time with the children, there's going to be a reset. We're going to divide the assets. We're going to deal with support and give time for with the children. In some states, it's a default equal time. In other states, it isn't. And that's so that's important. And you definitely see that much more with the narcissist borderline than you would in the ordinary case, where after a bit of conversation and maybe they work with a counselor, they come off that mindset and they realize, okay, yeah, I don't like it, but I realize I'm not losing. This is just, I mean, it's natural to feel like there's a sense of loss. Whether somebody is asking for the divorce or they don't want the divorce, you're going to feel a sense of loss.
Yeah, that's important. And I'm thinking, like, at Raiford, as you're saying, you're able to do it in most cases. I want to remind people that you deal mostly with normal divorce, and it's only a small percentage of like crazy high conflict, which we of course deal with 100% of the time.
Yeah, and the reality is the percentage of BPD narcissists out there is not high. So we're kind of dealing with a more typical cross section of society in our practice. So we see, a modest percentage of people where there's a narcissist borderline involved, and we know how to deal with that. We're pretty good students, and we've learned ways to deal with that along the way. So
Yeah.
it doesn't make it easy, but at least we know it. We kind of know it when we see it. And then we kind of know the techniques that can help us advance the case to a useful, reasonable conclusion.
Yeah, and that's great because we know a lot of attorneys don't know the techniques, and you get to choose if you educate yourself, right? Because there's no mandated education, especially for stuff like that. Okay, and
Right.
with those cases, what comes along with not being able to agree or settle outside of court, or what's called amicable divorce, is tons and tons of money. And so we talked about knowing the total cost ahead of time and how it might have changed how we do things. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, and really one of the core themes in the book, and one of the things I talk to all my clients about, is always having a cost-benefit analysis in mind when you're trying to decide whether to take a certain action in a case, whether you're going to want to go to trial, or whether you want to settle for whatever the terms may be. It's always important to balance the cost to get to the goal versus whatever the deal is on the table now. So it's, looking at that deal in front of you compared to what your chances might be at a trial. What is the potential range of outcomes versus the thing you're looking at today? How much will it cost in time, money, and emotional grief? And those things are all important to get to that objective. And is it a realistic goal? Then you weigh those two things and make your decision. A lot of people make these decisions in a vacuum, and they say, well, I don't like this offer that's on the table, and my lawyer told me that I could get X at trial, and I want that, so I'll just go to trial. Well, they don't have a good impression of how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost, and how much emotional energy will be drained from them over the X number of months or years it will take to get to that trial. So I'm just getting at, make sure you're aware of the risks and the potential outcome range at trial. And it's usually a range. It's not one answer. It's usually a range of.
Uh-oh. Rafe, I don't know if it's just me, but your volume is off. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Oh, no. All right. I don't know if anybody could hear me, but can you hear me? I can't hear you. Uh-oh. Yeah, I didn't hear you for like the past 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, I'll start again.
That's okay.
Somebody called me, and one of the dangers of using your
Oh,
phone.
that's what happened. Yeah, okay, yeah, they said
Yeah.
no. I was like,
Sorry,
is it just
I
me?
hung up
Because
on
the
that.
train's
So I wasn't poking at anybody on the screen. I was just trying to hang up on that call. Sorry. So, and I have do not disturb on. Anyway, so can you hear me now? So people are commenting.
Yes.
Okay, thank you guys. I appreciate the comments. And one person, okay, she says can't hear me either. We'll keep trying it. I can hear you just fine.
Okay,
So
I think I can hear you again, so I don't know if some of these might be delayed.
Might be delayed comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
So keep talking. Keep talking.
Yeah, thanks. So what I'm saying is take the comparison of the, thanks for the comment. So compare the price to get to trial, money, time, emotional energy, and also opportunity cost, which is what could you be doing otherwise than being stuck in this case? You can move on with your life. You got other things you can do. So I think about those costs, weigh that against what your potential gain is at trial, and then make an informed decision. So unfortunately, a lot of lawyers aren't good about talking about those costs, kind of having real talk with their clients. It's not that they're evil, it's just that they don't necessarily think in those terms. And clients don't think to ask because they're expecting their lawyer to tell them this stuff. You know, you shouldn't have to know. You're paying a lawyer to give you this advice, but I'm trying to help the consumers out there, the people involved in divorce, know what to ask their lawyers about. That's why the book's useful. This isn't stuff you get on Google. This is this kind of material, so you know what to talk to your lawyer about, and you're an informed customer, and you know what you're getting yourself into. So cost benefit analysis is really what it comes down to, and understanding all the costs and weighing that against your realistic potential outcome. And realistic is important, not pie in the sky, but what realistically can I achieve at trial? So do I know if it's worth it?
Yeah, and it's such an important idea. And I'm thinking that I also got really lucky because my divorce attorney, we spent a year trying to get the divorce to happen. It cost $100,000. They wouldn't settle. There was, the money was really in going back and forth and back and forth. And at the end, my lawyer said, of course I can't tell you what to do, but if we go to trial, this is going to take a minimum of a year. It's going to cost you a minimum of $50,000 more dollars. You might do better at trial. You probably would, but are you willing to sacrifice another year of torture? And we call it down in the muck. He's like, do you want to stay down in the muck, or do you want to take the potential $50,000 that you will definitely have to spend and invest it in your children's education and just move on with your life? And at that time, I just was like, I really appreciated that reality check that he gave me, because it wasn't like I was going to win either way. It was just choosing what the least painful plan would be. Right.
And, everybody's losing in this. Nobody loves getting divorced. And it's, we know the narcissist sometimes uses that to punish people. So let's put that aside for a minute. And that makes it challenging to divorce a narcissist, of course, is that they use the divorce itself as a form of punishment, and control. So that's a whole different ball of wax that we can talk about at another time. And that's a good question. How do you feel when you get everybody?
I was like, I wrote it down to save for later, because you guys, we have a very short time today, but we already scheduled our part 2, because both of us are very chatty, and we'll get to that. Probably not today, but in a month we're going to come back.
That's a good question. The good news is, to start, is I've read very few of them, which is a good thing. But yeah, we'll make sure to ask. We'll discuss that. It happens once in a while. So understanding. So let's talk about the narcissist borderline with trial, because unfortunately, they're usually all about going to trial, and they are a lot of times either not interested in settling, or the offer they've got on the table is really one-sided. So you have to really decide, that cost benefit analysis is tough, because they might make an offer that's really slanted or tilted in their favor, and you'll have to weigh those realistic costs, potential gains, and make a decision. It might be a tough one, but it might ultimately be the best for your family, because it ends it, and you get done sooner, and that may be well worth it. So it's not just the money, it's also being done and free of that and moving on. That has its own value. So that's important. But yeah, weighing the cost benefit analysis is, I'd say, number one for anybody anywhere in a divorce case. Is this thing going to be worth it in the end? The thing I always tell people is it worth spending $20,000 to save $10,000? That's just, it's an example. Or $100,000 to save $50. What are we really talking about in terms of money and time, so we can understand what kind of deal we're making?
You know, this made me think of something that we just had a conversation with a client about a couple of hours ago. This person said, I want justice. So I want to go to court because I want justice. Have you heard
Oh,
that
boy.
before?
Oh, yeah. When you hear
What
that,
do you think of
say,
that?
the two things you say
Family
to that
court.
are, number one, get out your checkbook. That's the first thing you say because justice is going to be expensive. Number two, there really isn't justice writ large in the courthouse. I hate to tell you, divorce is not about who's right and wrong. It's about dividing money and assigning, deciding parenting stuff. And it's very boring. Most divorces are extremely boring trials. And it's just you and your spouse, the two lawyers, and the judge and the court reporter sitting there. And it's very, very routine stuff, very dry, very dull. And the only thing the clients are thinking is, boy, the meter's running on two lawyers here. And this is getting expensive.
Right. And there's recesses and lunch hours and all kinds of breaks that you're still paying for. Like here where I am, it's about $5,000 a day for court average.
Yeah, and depending on where you are and who the lawyer is, $2,500 to $5,000 a day because the lawyer's spending prep time and they're not able to do work on their other cases. So out of a full trial day, you might be actually trying a case for a few hours if you're lucky. You're actually questioning witnesses, actually making an argument, doing lawyer stuff, maybe 3 or 4 hours out of the day, but you've gobbled up the rest of the day in prep, communicating with your client, talking to the other lawyer, sidebars like discussions with the judge, and it gobbles up tremendous amounts of time. It's probably the least efficient way to resolve a family's issues ever devised. I'm a big fan of mediation and collaborative divorce. I talk about that in the book. I think alternative dispute resolution is awesome. Now, again, since a lot of folks here are dealing with BPD narcissists, that may not be an option for you because those folks are not doing ADR. They want to go right to court. Or they're manipulating the ADR process potentially. So those are definite challenges dealing with the borderline narcissist.
Yeah. So as we were talking the other day too, you came up with this beautiful term. And I said, I've never heard that before. And I was like, oh, that's because you just made it up. Barstool counsel. What is bar? And this has to go in your next book. What is Barstool counsel?
Yes, not to be confused with Barstool Sports, which is a business I have no affiliation with. But Barstool Counsel, what I was talking about was your buddies at the bar are telling you their 2 cents about what you should do with your divorce, or your girlfriends are telling you whatever. And whenever I hear that my friends told me X or whatever they said to do, I'm always concerned because those folks aren't generally not divorce lawyers. They're not spending the time and effort you need to be trained in this stuff and be up on the case law and the changes in the statutes that occur constantly. And even if you've got somebody who is on the ball and maybe has a good recollection of their case, they might have been divorced before certain laws changed in your state, and the law might be completely different. The example I gave you then was in Illinois, the child support law changed dramatically in 2017 from a one-income model to a dual income model, among other things. And our custody law changed in 2015, so did alimony. Like, things changed radically from 2015 to 2017 with some amendments after that. So if you were divorced in 2014, your results will be wildly different than somebody getting divorced even 5-6 years later. If you were divorced in 2016 versus 2018, your child support calculation is completely different in our state.
Wow.
So that's dramatically, like child support might have been $3,000 and now it's $1,500 with the same income situation. So it's that happens in every state. Laws change, case law changes, and so you want to get advice from somebody who's up on these developments. It's always good to have a friend you trust to give you some advice, but just be careful about the information you're getting from somebody else. Their divorce is different from yours. Your mileage may vary, and you don't know all they'll say, for example, to a guy will say to another guy, I can't believe you're paying maintenance, alimony. I didn't have to pay. Well, then you find out the guy bought out the maintenance or gave some assets or did something else that made sense in that person's deal, and you don't know what happened. So when I hear about somebody's barstool advice, I'm always skeptical. And I tell them if you're concerned about my advice, consult with a couple other lawyers. I rarely get that, but it's better to, you know, friends are great for some stuff and for some moral support, but not for technical advice on a divorce case.
Yeah, yeah, makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's now talk about early deals and why they are most beneficial regarding settlement. And this might not apply to some of you guys because it involves empathy. But talk about that. Why are the early deals generally the best ones? And how many questions? Okay, we got like
I've got some.
7, 8 minutes.
Yeah, we're not. It's not a hard stop at 6. So
Okay, you tell me, Rafe, when you're ready.
yeah. So so let me answer that question. So early deals are better. Why is that? Well, the sooner you can work a deal or make an offer in your divorce case, the better, because people are still feeling sort of sorry about the situation, and maybe one person feels guilty about an affair or some, you know, about asking for the divorce, what have you. And in that early period of time, people are also staring down the barrel of a lot of expenses. You know, they're thinking about the life of the divorce case. The lawyer told them it's going to take a year to a year and a half, maybe up to 3+ years in Cook County, where Chicago's located, for example, or in one of the, you know, if you're in a big city, it's going to take longer. And they're listening to their lawyer tell them this could cost $50, $75, $100,000 if there's a big battle on up. And so everybody's looking over the cliff at that negative stuff. And so that's a time to maybe do some quick thinking and get your facts together, gather information, talk to your attorney, and figure out what kind of offer you're willing to make early, if at all possible, because people are far more malleable and they're willing to listen to things, in my experience, early rather than late. As time goes by, they feel less remorse, they get hardened in their positions, they go through those stages of grief, you know, and everybody goes through those stages in different rates, and they rotate back and forth through them. They're angry, then they feel sad, and then they're remorseful, they bounce back and forth. But at some point, they sort of harden. And then it's kind of like your most cases settle, like 95 to 98% of cases settle. The question is when. Can you get it done earlier, or are we going to wait right up till trial and spend all this money getting there when we could have got it done sooner? So when people are still, they haven't spent a ton of money on lawyers and their positions haven't hardened yet, I think that's a great time to try to make an offer and see if people are willing to talk.
Yeah, I know you had said when we talked before that often as time goes by, people say, why, I already spent this much money on an attorney, so I'm not going to just stop now because then it's wasted.
Right.
So I'm just going to keep going.
They get in that mindset, they're like, too much has happened. They've said too many things about me. They put bad stuff on social media, blah, blah, blah. I've spent a bunch of money. I'm done. And I understand that mindset. You still should do a cost benefit analysis, because even though you've spent a bunch, those are sunk. They think it's a sunk cost. Yeah, but there's still money to be spent to get to the end. So it's important to keep that in mind. Yes, you've spent X, but you're going to spend X more. So keep that in mind, and the emotional energy, pain for your family, all that stuff. You can't start healing till this is all done.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I know we're at the end, and you want to do like a quick question, like the one that somebody asked about, how do you feel when someone like a narcissist type hires you? And of
Sure.
course, I'm getting a warning that my phone's getting warm. I need to get a new phone, but we'll go as far as we can.
All right, I've got some time here still. I'm still pretty good, so we can go as long as we can. So let's talk about the narcissist. Number one, I try to avoid them. You can't always, but if folks are unreasonable in the consultation, the thing I say internally to talk to our other lawyers is, we're not hitmen or women, because most of our attorneys are female. What I mean by that is, we're not going to be the tools of somebody's vengeance. I refuse to do that. I have to look at myself in the mirror and think I'm a good person. They can go somewhere else. Plus, what ends up happening is, guess what? After they're done with you, we're the next bad guy. So then they become nasty to their own lawyers. So we don't need the trouble. Generally, we're pretty good at seeing those people and understanding who they are at the consultation level, and we refer those cases out to other lawyers. Once in a while, if you have somebody with those tendencies, the best thing you can do is try to counsel them away from those behaviors and ask them to we're big fans of counselors and therapists and psychologists. And what we can tell when somebody's asking us a counseling question rather than a legal question. And so something that we'll say to people on the phone is, one thing I'll say is, Well, I can answer that for you, but it's just stuff my dad would have told me when I was a kid, but I'm going to charge you, 500 plus an hour for the advice. But if you talk to a counselor, they're trained in this, they'll give you a much better answer. And the issues really goes deeper than something my dad would have told me. Like,
Right, get them
ignore it.
off the phone.
Like he would say, let it go, don't let it bother you, that kind of stuff. Well, I can tell you that all day long at my hourly rate, but that's not the real advice people need. They need professional advice from somebody trained in that stuff. And one thing I always talk about is 90% of what bothers people in a divorce is the 90% lawyers can't do anything about.
Ooh, I like that quote.
And
Yeah,
so
that's
much
my third quote I've taken down from you during this one.
so much of, and those of you dealing with a difficult spouse, whether it's truly narcissist, borderline, or just somebody being very high conflict, those people are going to be hard to deal with, and they're going to it's easy for me to tell you to ignore it, and I know it's hard to live it. So it's a different thing entirely. And so much of what's bothering you in your divorce case has very little to do with the money or the kids. It's all about the verbal abuse, the threats, intimidation, nasty emails, social media posts, stuff they're telling your friends, your family. That's what's really driving you crazy. And I get that. And so I think one of the early steps talking to somebody who's dealing with that is saying, this is normal. I mean, it's not normal that you're going through this, right?
Right.
But recognize it for what it is. You're okay. It's going to be over eventually. The lawyer I can't do anything for you to fix this, really. I always say there's no don't be a jerk order. I wish I could get a court order that says, don't be a jerk. And that with somehow you could enforce it. Unfortunately, the court isn't equipped for that. Our court system is well equipped for what I call binary, or what you call binary outcomes. Win, lose, guilty, not guilty, bright line stuff. Child support is X, these kinds of hard 50-50 division of assets. But somebody being a jerk, even real nasty stuff, the court is not good at dealing with. They don't have a toolbox to address that. And it's once you kind of understand the court's limitations, then you know your lawyer's limitations, and then you kind of know when there's an issue, you kind of know, is this a lawyer thing or is this a counselor thing? And you kind of know which phone number to dial. Because a lot of it is counselor stuff, that your money's well spent on a counselor and kind of poorly spent on the lawyer. And if you're not sure, obviously get advice from the attorney, and hopefully your lawyer will say, hey, this is really like a communications thing, dealing with your spouse, and you need to talk to the counselor about how to better communicate with them. I'll give you some pointers real quick, but I haven't been trained for years in grad school on this stuff.
Right. All right. So Rafe, let's end it here for today before my phone explodes again. And we already have our part 2 scheduled. So there's a bunch more questions that we haven't gotten to yet.
And we'll do a full hour that time. And just to let everybody know, we're happy to come back again. I love being on the show with Ben There Got Out. These guys are great. I'm so happy to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you've done to talk about the book. And I hope the book helps people. And I know you also talk about BIF and splitting. Those are a couple of favorites of mine, and I know yours too, by Bill Eddy, EDDY.
Yeah.
Phenomenal resources also. So thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.